Joining us now from Uzbekistan is independent journalist Hollie Mckay. And Hollie, first of all, are you safe?
I am safe. So I've crossed from Afghanistan into Uzbekistan, and so I'm in a much safer space now than I was 24 hours ago.
Hollie, I read your article on the fall of Mazur. It was heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching to say the very least. What was it like to be inside Afghanistan, outside of Kabul, when the cities began to fall?
It was just a uniquely petrifying experience, and I'm sort of someone who pretty much takes most things in my stride, and I'm not someone who gets particularly frightened, so to speak. But I think, and now I was really reflecting on it. I think it was one of the first times in my life where I did feel a genuine sense of fear because it was a situation that I'd never been in before, and there were just so many unknown factors. It was very hard for me to piece together what was going to happen, and so I did feel that very gnawing sense in the bottom of my stomach of just not knowing.
You had to navigate the airport. What was it like getting out of Afghanistan?
I actually ended up taking a different route from Afghanistan because where I was in the north in Mazar Sharif, the Taliban quickly seized control of the airport and the air controllers left. And so therefore flights were immediately cancelled. We got a notification straight away that we would not be flying out. So we really tried to configure a way that we could get to the Kabul airport, and that just looked like it was becoming increasingly impossible by the day. So we had to sort of come up with a land crossing, which was obviously it involved a lot of pieces and a lot of luck and things working out. But in our case, it was a risk that came with a reward.
What are you hearing about people still trapped inside Afghanistan, specifically Kabul?
It really depends. I mean, in Kabul, there's just so many people who are desperate to get out, and you can really feel that sadness and that desperation. And people are lining up at the airport, trying to get to the airport, trying to lodge paperwork, trying to make their case that they need to be evacuated. And it's a really sad thing to see. And then, of course, you have a different subset of people that are just realize that they probably won't qualify for an SIV visa and they don't have family overseas or really anywhere else that they can go. So it's this very tragic acceptance of the situation that they have no control over. This wasn't a government that came to power by a vote. So it was something that was very much forced upon them. And again, there are unknowns. And the Taliban is obviously trying to portray this image that they are very different in 2021 than they are in 2001. But that remains to be seen. There's a lot of words, and we haven't quite seen the action yet. So, unfortunately, they're going to be the guinea pigs that are going to experience whatever comes next, especially after the US makes its final withdrawal.
Hollie, you were in Mazur. Were you surprised at how quickly the cities in the province capitals fell?
Yes, it is shocking, and I've spent a lot of time over the past week really reflecting on my own analysis of the situation, even where I went wrong with it. I think everyone that I'd spoken to was fairly certain that Kabul would hold, and if it was to fall, it probably wasn't likely to crumble probably until next year. And it just went at dizzying speed. Really, within the week that I was there, I was living in a very normal Afghanistan that I'd grown to really love over the years. A lot of beautiful art and culture and food and people living their lives the best they can. And then just overnight, the batter of an eyelid, and you are in a completely different existence. And so that's just shocking for people. And so many people have grown up under the US occupation and they've learned to really love the freedoms. They've gone to school, they've become doctors and lawyers and teachers. And that, for women, is especially going to be stripped away from them. And that's just, I think, a really terrifying concept.
Hollie, so many nations involved in the effort in Afghanistan. If the old Taliban raises its ugly head, does anybody that you've talked to believe that that international coalition will once again come in to save the day?
Unfortunately, it's actually something I've really thought about a lot this week, and I don't think so. I don't see that there's an appetite for the United States to go back into Afghanistan. I don't see Europe or any of our allies kind of stepping up and taking that role beyond just diplomacy. China and Russia already have great relations with the Taliban. They're two of the only countries that are keeping their embassy there for now. So I just don't see it. I don't see in any semblance of justice for what was done to the people coming anytime soon, and I don't see any other alternative. As you can see, the Taliban has been incredibly strong for a long time, and it would take a pretty unimaginable effort to take them from power at this point.
Holly, you know the international forces, you know the weapons that they have. What is it that made people in turbans and sandals defeat not only the United States, but also the British and also the Soviets? What is it that causes them to keep winning?
I think there's multiple things. I think one of them, particularly right now, is just sheer numbers. There are so many. I think that was something that's been really woefully underestimated, especially in intel reports and things. A lot of reports that I see say that Taliban numbers are perhaps around 100,000, but I certainly think there's a lot more than that. Because it isn't that they're necessarily the best fighters in the world, but what they have is the strength in numbers. Um, they do have weapons that come in from all sorts of parts of the world, so they are replenished fairly easily. And they do have the heavy weapons, but they don't have air power. And air power was one thing that the Afghan army had, but really wasn't using it. It didn't use it effectively. I know in the case of Mazar, I didn't see a, I didn't see or hear a single aircraft being used as the Taliban was surrounding the city in every direction, and so that baffled me too. It just, yeah, I think the money and the supply and the Taliban just has this morale. They know what they're fighting for. And I think that's something also that was missing with the Afghan forces. Is this sort of when you have that kind of corruption in the government, or you don't know if you're going to receive your paycheck on time, um, where is the morale for that? How do you fight for a country that you don't believe is fighting for you? Whereas the Taliban were very clear in their ideology. They were clear in what it is that they were going to achieve. And they said very clearly, we want an Islamic state, we will take Kabul. And that's exactly what they did. Whereas I don't know what a victory looked like on the Afghan side. And I don't think anyone in Afghanistan knew that exactly either.